Hello everyone and welcome to my video lecture series. So in my last lecture I had started with the topic of biotechnology, and in that we had completed the tools and techniques required for recombinant DNA technology, right? And we had completed the part which was instrumentation. That was the first part. In that we had studied about PCR. Now we are going to continue with that tools and technique part, but we are going to start with the second part in it, that is about the biological tools. If you are watching this video lecture and if you still haven't subscribed to my channel, kindly do so and also press the bell icon so that you get regular updates from my side. Anyway, starting with today's topic. So we are continuing with the tools and techniques. We are continuing with the requirements for recombinant DNA technology, but now we are starting with the second part, which is about biological tools, right? Okay, so basically under biological tools we have to learn about three things that are required for recombinant DNA technology, right? First we are going to study about enzymes. Then the second thing under biological tools that we are going to study about are called as cloning vectors, and the third thing that we are going to study about are called as competent hosts. Okay, and once we complete with our today's lecture, all the requirements, all the tool techniques will be done with, and from the next lecture we will be starting with the actual recombinant DNA technology. Is that clear? So let us start with the first part, which is about enzymes. Okay, now what are enzymes? There are many different kinds of enzymes which are present. You must have learned about a lot of different enzymes. Okay, so can you give me some examples of enzymes? So I will write down a few enzymes over here. Okay, so for example, the names which I can remember are lysozymes, right? Then nucleases are the enzymes which can help in cutting the nucleus, right? Nucleases are of two types. Okay, there are endonucleases, right? Then there are exonucleases. For all those who are wondering what are lysozymes, lysozymes are basically enzymes which are present in our sweat, in our tears, which are antibacterial. Okay, so those enzymes are present in the body. Nucleases are present. Then there are certain enzymes which are called as restriction endonucleases. All right, then there are other enzymes also. For example, in DNA replication there are enzymes which are called as DNA ligase. Okay, then DNA polymerase. All right, then there are few more enzymes, some of them which are present in the lysosomes. For example, there is something which is called as alkaline phosphatase. Okay, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the example of enzymes. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to specifically concentrate on restriction enzymes. Okay, restriction enzymes are the enzymes which help in cutting the cloning vector and also the desired gene. Please remember that. So we have to study, or we have to concentrate more on restriction enzymes. So the restriction enzymes part has been given in the book. Now I have already made a video lecture on restriction enzymes. Okay, it is titled what are restriction enzymes. I had uploaded that video around 4 months ago. Don't worry, I will share the link with you. So before you proceed with this lecture any further, kindly go to that link and watch that video lecture on restriction enzymes. Okay, because that part is very important, and in that lecture which I had uploaded, I have described everything related to restriction enzymes, even certain extra parts which might be helpful for all those who are giving competitive exams. So please go and watch that video lecture on restriction enzymes, and once you have watched them, you can come back over here and continue with this lecture. Okay, so on your right hand top corner of the screen there might be a pop-up. Kindly click on that and watch that lecture first and then come back over here. Okay, All right, so if you are here, that means you have already seen the video lecture on restriction enzymes. If you have not seen the lecture yet, kindly do not continue with the video, because our next part which we are going to learn is about cloning vectors, and for that you should know what are restriction enzymes. So anyway, continuing with the next part, the second biological tool that we are going to study, that is called as cloning vectors. Okay, now what is the meaning of cloning vector? I have already told you in the last lecture what is the function of a vector. A vector is basically acting like a vehicle. Okay, it is basically carrying the desired gene or the desired fragment to the host cell, right? That gene which you have, okay, the gene which you want to insert into the host cell, you cannot directly insert it into the host cell, so you have to first attach it to a vector, and then that vector and the desired gene is inserted into the host cell. So the job of a cloning vector is like a vehicle. It is to transport the desired gene or the desired DNA fragment into the host cell. Is this clear? Okay, so I will write down the function over here. Okay, function is to transport the desired gene or DNA fragment. See, gene is nothing but a DNA fragment, so I can use any terminology that I want. It is to transport the desired gene or DNA fragment into the host cell. Okay, the host cell are mostly bacteria. We'll come to that in the later part of today's lecture. So is this clear? This is the function of the cloning vector. Now, which substances are used as cloning vectors? So many biological entities, many biological molecules are used as cloning vectors. Okay, I will write down a few examples. You don't have to study about all of them. Okay, I will give you information about the ones which are important. The rest of them, just remember the names. So some of the important tools, which are some of the important molecules which are used as cloning vectors are, first of all, I am going to write down plasmids. Okay, we are going to learn the structure of a plasmid, so don't worry about that. Then there are viruses which attack the bacteria. They are called as bacteriophage, right? So bacteriophage are also used as cloning vectors. So when I say that a bacteriophage is used as a cloning vector, that means I am inserting the desired gene or a DNA fragment into the bacteriophage, and that bacteriophage I am inserting into the bacteria. Is that clear? So that is how it is used. Then the other molecules which can be used as cloning vectors are some things which are called as cosmids. Okay, then there are something which are called as phagemids. A phagemid is basically a combination of a plasmid and a bacteriophage, so that is called as a phagemid. Then artificial chromosomes are also used. Okay, so don't worry about what these things are, just try to remember some of the names. Okay, it is not expected of you or expected from you to know the meaning of all these things. So there are three types of artificial chromosomes, right? There is something called as bacterial artificial chromosome, which is BAC, yeast artificial chromosome, YAC, and there is something called as mammalian artificial chromosome, MAC. So these are the artificial chromosomes. They can also be used as vehicles for carrying the desired gene. Is this clear? Okay, so then some of the viruses, for example, there is something called as baculovirus. I will write it down over here. So just like a bacteriophage, a baculovirus can also act like a vehicle to carry the desired gene. So I have written the names of some of the vectors which are used, okay, which can carry the genes from the donor cell to the host cell. Is that clear? And what is the job of the vector? The job of the vector is to attach the gene to itself, and then it will go inside the host cell and transport the gene. So plasmids, bacteriophage, cosmids, phagemids, artificial chromosomes, 3 types, baculovirus, these are the different types of cloning vectors. However, out of all of these, the most commonly used vectors are plasmids and bacteriophage. Please remember. And out of the plasmids and bacteriophage, the most common type of vectors which are used are plasmids. So if anybody asks you that out of all these vectors, which vector is most commonly used in recombinant DNA technology, then the answer is plasmids. Is that clear? Okay, and in plasmids there is a plasmid which is called PBr322. We will come to that later on in this lecture. That is the most common type of plasmid which is used. So I hope this is clear. I hope the meaning of cloning vectors is clear. Okay, all these examples, they are clear. Okay, now the next thing that we have to study is that every cloning vector has certain properties. Okay, there are basically 5 properties which every cloning vector should have. And if those properties are not present in a cloning vector, then it will not be a very good vector. Okay, so the 5 properties of a cloning vector, that is what we are going to start with the next point. Now this question is asked in the board exams, which are the important qualities or properties which each cloning vector should have. So I will write down the heading, properties of a cloning vector. Why is it called as a cloning vector? Because it is helping the gene to clone or make multiple copies of itself. That is why it is called as a cloning vector. Now coming to the first property of a cloning vector, okay, I will write down the properties, explain them to you, and later on when I draw a plasmid, you will better understand this property. So don't worry even if you don't understand these properties right now. Okay, so the first property of a cloning vector is that it should be able to replicate independently into the host cell. Okay, now what is the meaning of this? So if you take a vector and if you insert it into the host cell, obviously the vector is having the desired gene, and you insert it into the host cell, then inside the host cell, that plasmid or that vector, whatever you are using, bacteriophage, artificial chromosome, baculovirus, whatever the vector is, it should be able to multiply inside the host cell. See, if the vector multiplies, obviously the gene will also multiply, because each vector is carrying a gene, and because of that the incorporation of the gene into the host cell becomes very easy. So this is a very important property. Okay, that if you insert a vector into the host cell, then inside the host cell it should be able to replicate or multiply or divide on its own. Okay, for example, if I draw this diagram over here where I am showing a bacterium, all right, this is a bacterium. Okay, and just imagine this as the nucleus of the bacterium. Now inside this bacterium, if I insert this cloning vector, okay, and on this cloning vector I am showing this orange colored desired gene. So now when I have inserted the cloning vector, this should be able to divide inside the cell, so it should be able to form many copies. So over a period of time there should be many copies of cloning vectors inside that cell, and each one will have the desired gene. Are you getting this? Only then will that desired gene be incorporated into the genome of that bacterium. So this is the first property of a cloning vector, that it should be able to replicate independently. Okay, it should not be controlled by the host cell. It should multiply or divide or replicate on its own. This is the first thing. Now how is this replication happening? So there is a gene which is called as ORI gene. I will write down over here in the bracket. Okay, there is a gene which is called as ORI. This ORI gene, which is present on the cloning vector, that makes it possible for the vector to replicate on its own. If this ORI gene is not present on the vector, then the vector cannot divide inside the host cell. Don't worry, I will explain this to you when I explain plasmids. So this is the first property of replication. Is this clear? Coming to the second property of a cloning vector, the second property is that the vector or the cloning vector should be easily transferable into the host cell. So what is the meaning of this? See, a cloning vector which you are using, that should be easily able to pass inside the host cell. Suppose if you are using a cloning vector which you try to insert into a host cell, suppose if the host cell is E. coli, and if you are trying to insert a plasmid, suppose a plasmid is the vector, then if suppose that plasmid is not accepted by E. coli, then is it a good cloning vector? No, because till that plasmid enters the bacterium or till it enters the host cell, it cannot transfer the gene. So a good cloning vector should be easily be able to transfer itself or should be easily able to enter into the host cell. That is the second property of a cloning vector. Please remember this. Is that clear? Now coming to the third property, the third and the fourth properties are very important. Okay. The third property is, is that the cloning vector, so I am writing down over here, cloning vector should have marker genes having antibiotic resistance. Now this is a very important point. Okay, please pay attention over here. So I will just rub this off. Now what is this point saying? This point says that every cloning vector should have a marker gene having antibiotic resistance. Over here I will write down antibiotic resistant sites. Okay, now first of all, what is the meaning of a marker gene? See, all these things which you are doing, right? You are adding the cloning vector with the required gene, you are adding it into the host cell, right? Then you are expecting the cloning vector to replicate or multiply so that the genes or the required DNA also divides. But how will you check whether the cloning vector has replicated inside the host cell or not? Because the host cell is a bacterium, you cannot see it with your naked eye. Bacteria are very small, the plasmids are much smaller. So how will you come to know whether that cloning vector and the desired gene that you have inserted into the host cell, whether they are replicating or not? So each cloning vector has a marker gene. Each vector has a different marker gene. For example, if I am using two different plasmids as vectors, both the plasmids will have different type of marker genes. Okay, and each marker gene will help you in tracing whether the plasmid has moved, it has multiplied, all those things. Okay, if you remember DNA fingerprinting, in that we had talked about radioactive probes. Radioactive probes help us to locate where the single stranded strands have joined with the complementary strands, right? In a similar way, over here, the marker genes which are present on the vector, they help us to identify where that vector is present in the organism, the host cell, whether it has multiplied, whether it has not multiplied. So that is called as marker gene. Marker genes help in tracing the vector which you are using. Is that clear? That is the first point. Second is, here it is written that cloning vector should have marker genes having antibiotic resistant sites. Now, what is the meaning of antibiotic resistance? First of all, what are antibodies? What are antibiotics? Antibiotics are basically drugs or chemicals which you use to kill bacteria. These are antibacterial. Okay, so I will write down some of the examples of antibiotics over here. If I remember, ampicillin. Okay, there are many antibiotics. Then there is something called as tetracycline. Okay, these are the names of two antibiotics that I have written. Okay, ampicillin, tetracycline. Okay, they are used to kill bacteria. Now, please remember, when I say that there is antibiotic resistance, that means that suppose if I show a cloning vector over here, okay, and in this cloning vector I have inserted the desired gene which is orange in color, and over here I am showing this yellow area, and this yellow area is the antibiotic resistant gene or the antibiotic resistant area. And now suppose I put this cloning vector with the desired gene into a host cell. So I am drawing the host cell now. Again I am drawing a bacterial cell. Okay, now this bacterium is having that cloning vector, and suppose if I say that this cloning vector is having the resistance gene for ampicillin and tetracycline. Okay, so what that means is that this cloning vector cannot be destroyed by ampicillin or tetracycline. See, it is called as antibiotic resistant gene. Okay, antibiotic resistant gene or antibiotic resistant sites mean that these areas are having genes that cannot be affected by that particular antibiotic. For example, if I say that the two antibiotic resistant genes over here are AMPR, that is ampicillin resistant, and there is tetracycline resistance TETR, R is resistance. So if these two genes are present on the vector, that means that vector cannot be harmed by ampicillin or tetracycline. Now this same vector, when you are adding into the host cell, that bacterium, even that cannot be killed by ampicillin or tetracycline, because if you add ampicillin or tetracycline to kill that bacterium, then those genes will nullify the effect or negate the effect of the antibiotic. Is this clear? So normally these marker genes which you are using to identify the vectors, they also have antibiotic resistant properties. So please remember that. Maybe if this cloning vector is removed from the bacterium and if you add ampicillin or tetracycline or any other antibiotic, that bacterium will be killed. However, if you add the cloning vector, each cloning vector will have a marker gene which is also the antibiotic resistant site, and whichever antibiotic resistant site is present, from that antibiotic that bacteria will be saved because of those genes. Is this clear? See, naturally all bacteria have plasmids, and each plasmid has some antibiotic resistance. That is why you do not use only one antibiotic to kill all bacteria. Each type of bacterium has different types of antibiotics to kill it because of this property. I hope this is clear. So I hope the marker gene is clear. Marker gene can be useful to trace the cloning vector into the host cell, and also it is an antibiotic resistant site. That means that particular antibiotic cannot affect. Suppose if there is there is a third antibiotic present, and if you add that, suppose it is called as antibiotic X. If you add it to this bacterium, then antibiotic X will kill this bacterium. Why? Because there is no X resistant site over here. I hope you are getting. Whichever antibiotic resistant genes will be present, only from those antibiotics the cell will be saved or the cloning vector will be saved. So I hope this is clear. The third point is each cloning vector should have an antibiotic resistant gene or antibiotic resistant site which also acts as a marker gene. Okay, now coming to the next property, the fourth property of the cloning vector, and that is cloning vectors, extremely sorry for that, cloning vectors should have sites for cutting by restriction enzymes. These are also called as the cleavage sites. I am writing down the word over here. The meaning of cleavage site is a site which can be cut. Now, simple thing. What do you understand by this? That a cloning vector should have cutting sites by restriction enzymes, cutting sites for restriction enzyme, or cleavage site. Very simple. If you want to insert the desired gene into a cloning vector, again same thing. This is your cloning vector, okay, and over here this is the desired gene. Now if I want to add this desired gene into the cloning vector, where do I add it? So I have to cut a portion of the cloning vector out. Do you get me? So what I will have to do is I will have to basically cut out a portion of the cloning vector, right? This portion of the cloning vector I have removed, and now that area which has been removed, in that area I am going to add the required gene or the DNA fragment. Are you getting this point? See, because if you do not cut the part out of the cloning vector, there will be no area where you can attach the gene. Is this clear? Desired gene. So you need to cut the cloning vector part out so that you can insert the desired gene. Now, how do you cut the cloning vector? So for that you require restriction enzymes. So you have already seen, I am assuming that you have seen the lecture on restriction enzymes. You know restriction enzymes basically target sequences. For example, EcoR1 targets a sequence called as GAATTC. It is a palindromic sequence, right? So suppose EcoR1 is there, wherever that sequence is present, it is going to cut that sequence out, okay, and in that area of the cloning vector the desired gene can be inserted. Are you getting? So each cloning vector has many different locations which can be cut by many different restriction enzymes. For example, suppose if I say that this area has been cut by EcoR1, so I will label this area as EcoR1. That means this is the area which can be cut by EcoR1 because it is having the sequence GAATTC. Similarly, there will be different restriction enzymes which will recognize different sites. So I hope this is clear, because if a cloning vector doesn't have restriction sites or cleavage sites where a restriction enzyme can cut them, then you will not be able to insert the required gene or the required DNA fragment. Is this clear? So cloning vectors should have sites for cutting by restrictions enzymes. This is the fourth point. Don't worry, all these points I'm going to explain again when I draw the plasmid diagram. You will be able to understand them easily. Okay, the last point for cloning vectors is that the cloning vectors should have additional areas called as the promoter, okay, operator, etc. So I'm sure you remember what is promoter, operator. We had studied about the operon, we had studied about the lac operon, right? There is the regulatory gene, okay, there is the promoter, okay, promoter is a place where the RNA polymerase binds, then there is the operator where the repressor protein binds, then there are the structural genes LAC-Z, LAC-Y, LAC-A. So this cloning vector is basically nothing but a kind of operon. So you also need these areas of promoter, operator, okay, ribosomal binding sites, all these things you need on the cloning vector. So this is the last point, okay, that areas such as promoter, operators, etc. should be present on the cloning vectors. Is this clear? So with that we have completed this part regarding the properties of cloning vectors. There are 5 properties, very important to remember. A question can be asked. So let us have a look at the properties once again. These are the properties which every cloning vector should have. The cloning vector may be a bacteriophage, plasmid, artificial chromosome, baculovirus, anything, it should be having these properties. First is it should be able to replicate or multiply independently into the host cell along with the desired gene. Second is it should be easily be transferable into the host cell. Third is every cloning vector should have marker genes which are also antibiotic resistant areas. I have told you the importance of both marker gene and antibiotic resistance areas. The fourth point is that cloning vectors should have restriction sites or cleavage sites because of which they can be cut at that area by that particular restriction enzyme so that you can insert the required DNA fragment or the required gene. And the last point is there should be specialized areas such as promoter, operator, ribosomal binding sites, etc. so that the functioning of the vector is smooth. So these are the 5 properties or the 5 points which every cloning vector should have. Is this clear? So we have completed the part regarding the properties of cloning vectors. So see, in cloning vectors, first of all we have seen the definition. We have seen the different example of cloning vectors, and now we have seen the properties. Now the next thing is we are going to study a type of cloning vector which is called as a plasmid. So that is the only type of cloning vector which the book has explained. So we are going to study that. If possible, I will try to make additional videos on cosmids, bacteriophage, phagemids, etc. if time permits, but that is not in the syllabus. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub this off. Okay, the next part is about plasmids. All right, so let us start with the part. Okay, plasmids are nothing but cloning vectors. They are the most popular type of cloning vectors. Now, which is the most common type of plasmid which is used? That plasmid is called as PBr322. Okay, now in that restriction enzymes video lecture, I have taught you how to name the restriction enzymes, what the nomenclature is. Now over here, normally the plasmids are represented by a small p, which stands for the plasmid. The next letters are the names of the researchers who have developed the plasmid or the area where the plasmid has been discovered. So here B and R stand for Bolivar and Rodriguez, and 322 is the number given according to the order of discovery. So this is plasmid of Bolivar and Rodriguez, okay, which is having the order of discovery number 322. Another example is PUC. Okay, I will write down over here PUC 18 or PUC 19. That is a plasmid which has been developed in University of California, and it is order of discovery is 18. So this is something about the nomenclature of plasmids. It is not given in the book. Now see, we have talked about the properties of cloning vectors, 5 properties. Now all these properties are not present in naturally occurring plasmids. What are naturally occurring plasmids? Naturally occurring plasmids are the plasmids which are present in each bacterial cell. Each bacterial cell has a plasmid. So sometimes you have to artificially create plasmids, or you have to create plasmids using genetic engineering, so that all these properties are present. For example, PBr322 is a genetically engineered plasmid. Okay, it is not present naturally inside the bacterial cell. Please remember this. So how do they prepare genetically engineered plasmids? Very simple. They add antibiotic resistant areas, they add additional restriction sites. Okay, so by doing that, the plasmid which is formed becomes a competent cloning vector, becomes a good cloning vector. So please remember, most of the plasmids which are used for recombinant DNA technology, they are genetically engineered plasmids, so that they are very competent in what they do. Is that clear? Okay. Now the plasmids, most of them that are designed in such a way that they can be inserted into the host cell, and in most cases the host cell is E. coli. Please remember this. Okay, E. coli is a bacterium which is called as Escherichia coli. So most of the plasmids, they are designed in such a way that they can be inserted into the E. coli bacterium, and they can do their job. Is this clear? Okay, I will write down some more examples of plasmids. So PBr322 is one example. Then the other examples, if you want, there is something called as PBr30. There is something called as PUC18. There is something called as PUC19. Okay, these are all genetically engineered plasmid. If you want a plasmid which is a natural plasmid, then I will write down the name. There is something called as TI plasmid. We are going to learn about that in this lecture itself. Okay, TI plasmid is a naturally occurring plasmid. However, we do modify it for our uses. Is this clear? So these are some of the plasmids which are present. Now let us study the general structure of a plasmid. Okay, so what we are going to do over here is we are going to sketch the structure of a plasmid. Okay, so now this is, I am not sketching any particular plasmid as such, I am just drawing a general structure. Now let us remember the points or properties of a cloning vector. The first property was a cloning vector should be able to replicate independently inside the host, and I had told you that is possible because of a gene which is called as origin. Do you remember? So anyway, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to just draw the boundary of this plasmid. Okay, a plasmid, everybody knows it is a extra chromosomal double stranded material. So this is your plasmid. Now the first thing that I'm going to draw over here is a region which is called as the ORI region, ORI, and ORI region is the region which is very important for replication of the plasmid or replication of the vector. Here we are talking about plasmid, so I am going to show this region which is called as ORI region. What is the function of ORI region? It helps in replication of the plasmid or the vector. So now we are talking about plasmids. So if this ORI gene, okay, this is basically a gene, please remember this is a gene. If this ORI gene is not present in the plasmid, it will not be able to multiply inside the host cell. What else, what other things are present inside a plasmid? So the next thing, if you remember, we had studied about the marker sites, the antibiotic resistant sites. So let us show two antibiotic resistant sites. So this green colored area which I am shading, I am going to show it as a ampicillin resistant site. So over here I am going to write down AMPR. That means the ampicillin resistant gene is present. So this plasmid cannot be destroyed by using the antibiotic ampicillin. Similarly, let us show one more antibiotic resistant region. Now the same diagram given in the book is slightly different. They must have shown, there they have shown only one antibiotic resistant region. Okay, I am just trying to draw a separate diagram, okay, and just try to understand what I am showing. So one more antibiotic resistant region, let us show that with the yellow color. So what I'm going to do is I am going to draw that, and this region we will call it as tetracycline resistant region. So I will write it as TETR. So this region is resistant to tetracycline antibiotic. This earlier region is resistant to ampicillin antibiotic. So both these antibiotics cannot affect this plasmid, and if this plasmid is inserted into E. coli, then both the antibiotics cannot affect that E. coli. Is that clear? Now what else is present? We had studied they also should have cleavage sites or restriction sites. So now let us draw another area which is having the cleavage sites. Okay, I am going to show them in red color. Okay, this entire area if you want. So I am going to just shade it off. So this is the region where the restriction enzymes can cut the plasmids at different locations. This entire region. Okay, for example, this area that can be cut, this area that can be cut using the restriction enzyme EcoR1. This can be cut using the restriction enzyme ALU1. This can be cut using restriction enzyme BAMH3. This can be cut using restriction enzyme HIND3. So these are the different restriction, these are the names of restriction enzymes that I have written. Okay, if you have seen the lecture on restriction enzymes, you must have definitely seen them. So these are the areas where restriction enzymes are present. So what this means is, if I go to this area which is having a site for HIND3, that means HIND3 restriction enzyme can cut the plasmid over there and insert a DNA fragment. Similarly, if I have BAMH3, then BAMH3 can cut in this area and insert a restriction fragment over there. Similarly, ALU1 can cut in this area. So each area is having that specific sequence. For example, if I show or magnify this area of EcoR1 restriction site, then that site will be having the sequence which is something like this: GAATTC, or over here it will be CTTAAG. This is 5' to 3', this is 3' to 5'. I'm just showing an example. Is this clear? So basically these areas are the areas which can be recognized by restriction enzymes and cut those areas off so that you can insert the desired fragment. So I hope this is clear. So this is the typical structure of a plasmid. Please remember this. Okay, so three things which are very important: origin, tetracycline resistant gene, and site for antibiotic resistance, or they are also called as the marker genes. Please remember. So with that we have completed the structure of a plasmid. So I hope it is clear what a plasmid is. Okay, it is acting like a vector and it is carrying the desired gene. Now coming to the last part of this cloning vectors is plant vectors, okay, which can be used, plant based vectors which can be used, or vectors which are used in agriculture. That is going to be the next part that we are going to study. So let us write down plasmids. We are again going to talk about plasmids used in agriculture. Okay, now normally in agriculture we use a plasmid which is called as TI plasmid. We normally don't use a genetically engineered plasmid here like PBR322 or PBR30. Okay, now let us take an example. Okay, I'm going to write the name of a bacterium, and the name of that bacterium is Agrobacterium. This is the generic name, tumefaciens. Now very important name to remember, tumefaciens. Agrobacterium tumefaciens is the name of a bacterium. Now this bacterium is basically causing damage to plants. Please remember this, because this bacterium causes tumors to grow into the plant. Okay, so it causes cancerous tumors to grow inside the plant, and that destroys the plant. Okay, and that is done by this Agrobacterium tumefaciens. And the tumors which are formed in the plant, these tumors are called as crown gall tumors. Okay, so what this bacterium is going to do is, whenever the plants get infected by the bacterium called as Agrobacterium tumefaciens, this bacterium will cause tumors to grow on the plant, and because of the tumors, finally or later on, the productivity of the plants will decrease and it will die. And these tumors are called as crown gall tumors. Is that clear? Okay, now how does this Agrobacterium work? Please pay attention over here, and also we will see how we can use Agrobacterium to our advantage. Okay, now suppose if I draw this Agrobacterium, it is a bacterium, so again I am going to draw it like a regular bacterium. This is the bacterium, right? And I am going to show the nucleus of the bacterium, which is the nucleoid. Okay, so I'm just going to label it nucleoid. I don't need to draw this, but I'm just trying to make things easy. Now this Agrobacterium has its own plasmid. Okay, and this plasmid is called as the TI plasmid. So we are going to use a green color to represent that. So this over here I'm going to draw a plasmid. Okay, and now in this TI plasmid, okay, this plasmid, let me label it over here for you. This is called as the TI plasmid. Now why is it called as TI plasmid? Because TI stands for tumor inducing plasmid, because this Agrobacterium is causing tumors to grow on plant, and those tumors are caused by this plasmid. That is why it is called as TI plasmid. It is naturally present in the Agrobacterium. Is this clear? Now what is causing the tumors to grow? So this TI plasmid is basically having a specialized gene. I am going to show it with yellow color. So this yellow colored area, if you see, this area has a gene which is called as tDNA. The name of the gene is tDNA, tumor inducing DNA. See, now pay attention. What happens is, whenever Agrobacterium infects a plant, what it does is it releases this TI plasmid into the genome or into the host cell, or into the host. That plasmid, what it does is it releases that tDNA gene of the plasmid into the host chromosomes, and that tDNA basically, when it enters the chromosomes of the plant cell, it causes the tumors to grow. So who is causing the tumors? The main thing which is causing the tumors is the tDNA. Please remember that. If the tDNA gene is not present, then tumors will not be formed. So if you can remove the tDNA, then the bacterium, the Agrobacterium tumefaciens, will not be able to grow tumors inside the host plant. Are you getting this? So once again, Agrobacterium tumefaciens causes tumors to grow, which are called as crown gall tumors. Okay, how does it do that? It does it with the help of a plasmid called as Ti plasmid, and inside the Ti plasmid is present a gene called as tDNA. When the Agrobacterium infects the plants, it releases that Ti plasmid into the host genome. So it releases into the genome of the plant. Inside the genome of the plant, inside the plant cells, the plasmid will release tDNA, and that tDNA is the destroying agent. It causes the tumors to grow. It mixes with the chromosomes of the plant cell. Now, how do we use this for our advantage? So what we do is, in recombinant DNA technology, we remove the tDNA from the Ti plasmid, and in that area which is empty, the area which has been removed. So what I will do is, I will show it again with the help of a diagram. So we will just scroll downwards. Okay, again I am going to draw the same diagram. So this is your Agrobacterium, correct? Again, if you want, I will show the nucleoid. Nucleoid is a very underdeveloped nucleus which is present in bacteria. And now what I am going to show is, I am going to remove the tDNA. How do you remove the tDNA? Very simple, using restriction enzyme. The restriction enzyme will cut, see, the plasmid is a cloning vector, so you cut the plasmid, and what I will have is, I will have this empty portion of the Ti plasmid. Are you getting this? Because that yellow portion of the tDNA, that has been removed. So I will write it down over here. tDNA removed from Ti plasmid using restriction enzyme. Restriction enzymes are also written as RE, restriction endonucleases. So you have used a restriction enzyme and you have removed that tDNA, which is the harmful part, from the Ti plasmid. Now what do you do? Now in that area which is empty, over there you can insert the required gene which you want to insert. See, suppose if I am taking an example of apple plant, okay, apple tree, and suppose if the trees are giving fruits, apple fruits, which are small in size, and if I know about a gene which if I insert into the apple plant, then the size of the apples will increase. So that will be my desired gene. So now what I will do is, I will take that desired gene. Now that desired gene I am going to show with orange color. That desired gene I will attach it with the Ti plasmid. So over here you can see I have entered the desired gene. So I should write over here desired gene. It can be any desired gene. I am just giving you an example of apple trees. So I have inserted the desired gene which can increase the size of the apples. Now what will happen is, now this Agrobacterium is not having tDNA, it is having Ti plasmid, but it is having the desired gene. Now I will allow the Agrobacterium to infect the apple plant. When the apple plant gets infected by Agrobacterium, it will release the Ti plasmid into the genome of the apple plant. Once the Ti plasmid is released, now the Ti plasmid will not release tDNA because tDNA has been removed. Instead, it will release the desired gene. The desired gene will mix with the plant chromosomes and it will show its effect. Are you getting this? Are you getting this? So I am using the Ti plasmid as a cloning vector. The Agrobacterium is also alive, but it is not able to cause any damage to the plant. This is one example. Take the example of another gene. Suppose if I write it down over here, there is something which is called as the NIF gene, which is also called as nitrogen fixation gene. So normally nitrogen fixation cannot be carried out by plants. It is done by nitrogen fixing bacteria. You know that, okay? But if I know about a gene which is called nitrogen fixing gene, and if I can insert it into that empty area of Ti plasmid after removing the tDNA, and then if I allow the agrobacterium to infect the host plant, then that plasmid will be released into the host plant Ti plasmid, and along with that, that NIF gene will also be inserted. Are you getting this? So it will show its effect. So basically I am using Agrobacterium tumefaciens as a source of a cloning vector. Which is the cloning vector over here? The cloning vector over here is the Ti plasmid, tumor inducing plasmid, which originally had the tumor inducing gene, which is the tDNA, but I removed that tDNA. Instead of that, I added my desired gene or my DNA fragment which I wanted. Is this clear? So in agriculture, please remember, Agrobacterium tumefaciens is used, and the Ti plasmid is modified using recombinant DNA technology, and it can be used as a cloning vector. That is why the name of the bacterium is Agrobacterium. Agro means related to agriculture. Is this clear? So with that, we have completed this part about plasmids which are used in agriculture. I hope this part is clear. I hope Agrobacterium is clear. Please remember the structure. The plasmid is Ti plasmid. The original gene which causes damage is called tDNA. It causes tumors to grow in plant. What we are doing is we are using restriction enzymes, removing or cleaving that tDNA, and that empty area we are attaching the desired gene, and now we are allowing that Agrobacterium to infect the plant, whichever plant we want to modify, and then that Ti plasmid will enter the genome, that required gene will enter the genome, and you will see the effects, and this plant will now be called as a transgenic plant. Please remember that. See, whenever you insert any foreign gene into an organism, that organism is called as a transgenic organism. Over here it will be called as a transgenic plant. We will be learning about transgenic organisms in the later part of this chapter. If you insert a gene, a foreign gene, into a host animal, then that animal is called as a transgenic animal. Please remember this. Is that clear? Okay, so I hope this part is clear. So with that, we complete the second biological tool, which is called as cloning vectors. This is a very, very important part. So what did we learn in cloning vectors? First thing is we learned the definition. It is a vehicle to carry the desired gene into the host cell. Second, we learned the different types of cloning vectors. Which were they? So they were, most common types are plasmids and bacteriophage. I forgot to tell you, plasmids, I told you the types. Bacteriophage, the two common types of bacteriophage are lambdaphage, okay, and the other is called as M13 phage. So these are the two main types of bacteriophage which are used as cloning vectors. Then apart from this, what else are used? Artificial chromosomes are used. Bacterial artificial chromosome, yeast artificial chromosome, mammalian artificial chromosome, baculovirus, all these things can be used. Then we learned about the 5 properties of cloning vectors. Which are they? It should be able to replicate independently into the host cell because of the which gene? Please remember, because of the ORI gene. Okay, remember this diagram. Then second is it should be easily transferable into the host cell. See, now we are learning about Agrobacterium. Why are we not using PBr322 to insert into the host cell? Because compared to the PBr322, the Ti plasmid easily enters the host cell. That is why we are using Agrobacterium. Okay, because the transfer rate is much higher in Ti plasmid compared to PBr322, because PBr322 is genetically modified. However, it cannot be as easily transferred into the host plant as compared to Agrobacterium Ti plasmid. That is why we are using Agrobacterium Ti plasmid in agriculture. Anyway, which was the next point? Second is easily transferable. Third point is over here. There should be marker genes which are also antibiotic resistant sites. Fourth point, there should be cleavage sites or sites for cutting by restriction enzymes. So when you cut that area, you can insert the required DNA. See, the required DNA fragment which is inserted is also called as a DNA insert, or it is also called as a gene, or it is also called as a DNA fragment. Please remember. Okay, that is the gene which you want to insert into the host cell. Is that clear? And last point is other things such as promoter, operator, ribosomal binding sites, all those things should be present in a cloning vector. After that, we learned about plasmids. I told you everything about them. I talked about the genetically engineered plasmids. Okay, I taught you the general structure of a plasmid, and then we went on to plasmids used in agriculture, and we talked about Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Is this clear? Okay, so now we are going to start with the last part in our today's lecture, and that is going to be the last biological tool which is used. So we have finished with the restriction enzymes, we have finished with cloning vectors. The last biological tool which is required for recombinant DNA technology is called as competent host. Very important part, because all these changes that you want to make, these changes you want to make in the host, right? See, this required gene which you are inserting it finally into the host, right? So you want to make changes in the host. So the third requirement is a competent host. A competent host is any organism into which the cloning vector and the desired gene is inserted. So I will write it down. It is any organism in which the cloning vector, that vector may be anything, plus required gene or DNA fragment are inserted. So now, can you take any organism and into that add the cloning vector? No, because any organism will not allow the cloning vector to be inserted inside it. So there are a few organisms, especially bacteria, which are used as competent hosts. What are competent? Competent means which can comply with this process, which can allow this process, which can allow the recombinant, which can allow the cloning vector and the desired gene to be to enter inside it, to transfer inside it. So some of the examples of bacteria which are used as competent hosts are the first bacteria which I remember is called as Bacillus haemophilus. Okay, this is one of the bacterium. The second bacterium is called as Helicobacter pylori, H. pylori, Pylori, and the third and the most common type of host used in recombinant DNA technology is called as Escherichia coli. So please remember these names. These are the most commonly used bacteria, and normally a bacterial cell is used as a host, and among the bacterial cells, these are the three most common examples which are used as hosts. So with that, we finished this part of biological tools. So we have finished with the enzymes. In that we studied restriction enzymes, then we studied about the cloning vectors, and now finally we have completed with competent host. So finally, what is recombinant DNA technology? You remove a gene or DNA fragment from any cell. Okay, that DNA fragment is the fragment, or that gene is the gene which is of desire. That gene, you add it into the cloning vector. How do you do it? You cut the cloning vector using restriction enzymes, and that gene is attached inside the cloning vector. Okay, that cloning vector plus gene is then inserted into the competent host cell. Inside the competent host cell, the cloning vector will replicate, the desired gene will replicate, and then that desired gene will get incorporated into the genome of the host cell, and it will show its effect. Is this clear? Okay, so with that we have completed the entire part of tools and techniques for recombinant DNA technology. We have finished with all the requirements. To make a summary, what are the requirements for recombinant DNA technology? First is we require instruments. We require many different methods to separate the macromolecules: spectroscopy, mass spectrometry, ion exchange chromatography, We also studied about polymerase chain reaction, which is a means of amplification of the gene or the required DNA fragment. So that is the first part, instrumentation under tools and techniques. The second part we studied today is about the biological tools which are used. 3 tools are used: enzymes, especially restriction enzymes, cloning vectors, and the host into which both the desired gene and the cloning vectors are inserted. So with that, our tools and technique part for recombinant DNA technology is complete. In our next lecture, we are going to begin with the actual recombinant DNA technology, which should be very easy if you have understood everything up till now. So friends, if this lecture was helpful to you, do put in a like, please do comment, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and do share it with your friends. Thanks a lot.